The emergency meeting hall on Serenus buzzed with quiet panic. 12 different alien species sat around the crystal table, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and soft harmonics. At the head of the table, Elder Zephys of the Vexari raised one of her 4 delicate arms for silence. "The outer colonies have fallen," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. "Kepler 438b was stripped clean 3 days ago. Nothing remains but bare rock." The assembled representatives of the Vexari Confederation shifted uncomfortably. The Trilaxians fluttered their wing membranes in distress, while the crystalline Nethori dimmed to almost complete transparency. These were peaceful species, herbivores and filter feeders who had built their civilization on knowledge, art, and harmony with nature. Commander Veltar, the most aggressive member of their so-called military, stepped forward. His people, the Corvani, were considered the warrior caste of the Confederation. They stood nearly 4 feet tall when fully extended, with natural armor plating and sharp defensive spines. By galactic standards, they were about as threatening as an angry butterfly. "We cannot fight them," Veltar admitted, his spines drooping in defeat. "Our strongest weapons barely scratch their ship hulls. Their smallest vessels carry more firepower than our entire defense fleet." Elder Zephys touched the holographic display floating above the table. Images of devastation filled the air. Planets that had once been garden worlds now looked like burned skulls. Cities that had taken centuries to grow were reduced to ash in hours. The Korthak hegemony moved through space like a plague, consuming everything biological in their path. "They are parasites," whispered Dr. Lennis, the Confederation's chief scientist. Her tentacles trembled as she spoke. "They strip away all plant life, enslave any animal species they find useful, and leave nothing but dead worlds behind them. Our scouts report they are already moving toward the inner systems. The Korthak were everything the Confederation was not. Where the Vexari and their allies had evolved on peaceful worlds with abundant resources, the Korthak came from a dying planet, where only the most aggressive survived. They had turned their desperation into a weapon, spreading across the galaxy like hungry wolves. "How long do we have?" asked Elder Zephys. "Based on their current pattern," Dr. Lennis calculated, "they will reach our core worlds within 1 standard galactic year, possibly sooner if they decide to accelerate their harvest schedule." The hall fell silent except for the gentle humming of the life support systems. These creatures had never known real war. Their conflicts were settled through debate, their competitions were academic, and their greatest violence involved heated discussions about poetry. "We could surrender," suggested one of the Trilaxian delegates. "Offer them our knowledge libraries in exchange for our lives." "They do not negotiate," Veltar replied grimly. "Every species that has tried to bargain with them has been enslaved or consumed. They see us as resources, nothing more." Elder Zephys closed her large, gentle eyes. When she opened them again, they held a resolution that surprised everyone present. "Then we must seek help from outside the Confederation," she said. The idea was radical. The Vexari Confederation had always been self-sufficient, proud of their ability to solve problems through cooperation and intelligence. Asking for outside help went against everything they believed in. "From whom?" asked Dr. Lennis. "The Galactic Union has already refused our request for aid. They consider the Korthak a localized problem that does not threaten their core interests." "Not from the known galaxy," Elder Zephys said slowly. "From the unexplored regions. From species we have never contacted." The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the assembly. The unexplored regions were considered dangerous, filled with unknown threats and possibly hostile civilizations. The Confederation had always avoided contact with such areas, preferring the safety of known space. "That is incredibly risky," protested the Nethori representative, her crystal form flickering with anxiety. "We could be inviting something worse than the Korthak into our space." "What could be worse?" Elder Zephys asked simply. "In 12 months we will all be dead or enslaved. Our children will be bred as livestock, and our worlds will be empty rocks. Can any unknown threat be worse than certain extinction?" The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Species that had spent centuries avoiding conflict now argued with desperate intensity about their survival. In the end, the vote was close but clear. They would send out a distress signal to anyone who might be listening in the unknown regions of the galaxy. Dr. Lennis worked for 3 days straight to prepare the transmission. It had to be strong enough to reach distant stars, complex enough to convey their desperate situation, and appealing enough to motivate someone to help them. We will offer our greatest treasure, she decided, pure crystallized knowledge from our libraries. Information about technology, science, philosophy, and art accumulated over thousands of years. The signal went out on every frequency they could generate, pushed by their most powerful transmitters toward the dark regions of space, where their star charts showed only question marks. It carried the story of their civilization, their current plight, and their offer of payment to anyone willing to help defend their remaining worlds. To any civilization receiving this transmission, the message began, "We are the Vexari Confederation, a peaceful alliance of 12 species facing extinction. A hostile force known as the Korthak hegemony is systematically destroying our worlds and enslaving our people. We have no experience with warfare, and lack the capability to defend ourselves against their aggression." The message continued with technical details about Korthak ships and weapons, descriptions of their tactics, and careful explanations of what the Confederation could offer in return for military assistance. To sweeten the deal, they included samples of their most advanced technology and scientific discoveries. 3 months passed with no response. The Korthak continued their steady advance, now only 8 months away from the core worlds. Some Confederation members began preparing evacuation plans, though they had nowhere to run. Then, on a quiet morning when Elder Zephys was reviewing refugee placement reports, Dr. Lennis burst into her office. "We have a response," she gasped, her tentacles quivering with excitement and fear. The signal had come from a small yellow star in an unexplored sector. The species called themselves humans, and claimed to have received the Confederation's distress call. Their response was brief and somewhat confusing. "Greetings, Vexari Confederation. We have received your request for assistance against hostile forces. We are dispatching a ship to your location to assess the situation and provide aid. Please do not be alarmed by our vessel's energy signatures. We mean no harm to peaceful species. Estimated arrival time 4 weeks. Signed, Captain Elena Vasquez, United Earth Expeditionary Force." Elder Zephys read the message 3 times before looking up at Dr. Lennis. "They are sending only one ship," she said quietly. "Yes," Dr. Lennis replied. "I ran the signal analysis. Their technology appears to be unusual. The energy readings embedded in their transmission suggest they use some form of controlled antimatter reactions." "Antimatter?" Elder Zephys felt a chill run through her delicate frame. Only the most advanced and dangerous civilizations in the galaxy dared to work with antimatter. What kind of people have we contacted? Neither of them could answer that question. They could only wait and hope that their desperate gamble had not doomed them all. The UES Vindication dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Serenus system, like a predator emerging from deep water. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge watching the tactical display as her sensors mapped the local space. "Interesting," she murmured, studying the readings. "Looks like we have company." The Korthak scouting fleet had arrived just hours before the human ship. 15 vessels, each the size of a city block, were already moving toward the inner planets. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons designed to crack planetary surfaces and harvest the biological matter beneath. "Captain," called Lieutenant Chen from the communications station, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet. The locals are trying to warn us about the hostile fleet." Elena smiled grimly. "How thoughtful of them. Open a channel to the planet first. Let's introduce ourselves properly." On Serenus, Elder Zephys nearly fainted when the human ship appeared on their long-range sensors. The vessel was smaller than their own city ships, barely 300 meters long, but the energy readings it generated made their equipment scream warnings about dangerous radiation levels and potential weapons signatures. "What are they?" whispered Dr. Lennis, staring at the impossible readings. "Their ship is outputting more energy than our entire orbital defense grid." Before anyone could answer, a communication signal arrived. The universal translator worked overtime to convert the alien language, producing a voice that sounded pleasant but somehow carried an undertone of barely contained violence. "Greetings, Vexari Confederation. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Vindication. We received your distress call and came to help. I see you have some uninvited guests in your system. Should we take care of them first, or would you prefer to chat while they blow things up?" Elder Zephys found her voice after several attempts. Captain Vasquez, we are grateful for your response. However, you should know that the Korthak fleet consists of 15 heavily armed vessels. Each one carries enough firepower to level a city. We do not wish for you to sacrifice yourself in a hopeless battle. A strange sound came through the communication link. It took the Vexari several moments to realize the human was laughing. 15 ships? That's it? Well, this should be over quickly. Please stand by. The channel closed, leaving the Confederation leadership staring at each other in confusion. Aboard the Vindication, Elena was already issuing orders. Battle stations, people. Looks like we get to field test the new weapon systems. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. These were volunteers from Earth's military, men and women who had signed up for humanity's first deep space mission, knowing they might face unknown dangers. They had trained for years in Earth's high-gravity environment, fought in conflicts across their home planet, and carried weapons that could crack moons. The Korthak fleet detected the human ship's approach and immediately changed course to intercept. To them it looked like a small, weak vessel crewed by unknown aliens, perfect prey to warm up before the real harvest began. "Unknown vessel," came the Korthak transmission. "You have entered our hunting ground. Surrender now and we will grant you a quick death." Elena shook her head in disgust. "I really hate bullies. Tactical, paint them up. Let's see what these jerks are made of." The first Korthak ship to fire learned that humanity had very different ideas about space combat. Instead of the energy beams or plasma missiles used by most galactic civilizations, the humans responded with kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The Korthak vessel simply ceased to exist. One moment it was a threatening warship, the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated particles. What was that? Gasped Dr. Lennis on Serenus, watching through their orbital telescopes. The answer came as the human ship tore through the Korthak formation like a shark through a school of fish. Where galactic warfare typically involved long exchanges of energy weapons and careful maneuvering, the humans fought with overwhelming firepower and terrifying aggression. The Korthak tried to adapt, using their superior numbers to surround the smaller human vessel. They discovered that humans had solved the problem of fighting multiple opponents by simply destroying everything in range simultaneously. The Vindication launched something their computers classified as a nuclear device, and though it was far more advanced than anything in the Confederation databases, 6 Korthak ships vanished in a single brilliant flash. "By the ancient stars," whispered Commander Veltar. "They just detonated a small sun in the middle of the enemy formation." The surviving Korthak ships tried to retreat, but the human vessel pursued them with relentless efficiency. It moved unlike anything in the Confederation's experience, pulling accelerations that should have turned any crew into paste against their bulkheads. Whatever these humans were, they had evolved under conditions that made them naturally suited for the violence of space combat. In 17 minutes, the entire Korthak scouting fleet was destroyed. Not damaged, not disabled, completely eliminated down to the last escape pod. The communication channel reopened, and Captain Vasquez's voice returned, sounding slightly apologetic. "Sorry about that delay, Elder Zephys. Had to deal with your uninvited guests. Now, about this assistance you requested. What exactly are we dealing with here?" Elder Zephys tried to speak but only managed a series of small squeaking sounds. Dr. Lennis took over the conversation, her voice shaking. "Captain Vasquez, we are amazed by your capabilities. However, what you just destroyed was merely a scouting force. The main Korthak invasion fleet consists of over 10,000 vessels, each larger and more heavily armed than the ships you just eliminated." Another pause. Then the human responded with what sounded like mild interest. 10,000? Okay, that's more substantial. We'll need to see some tactical data before we can plan an appropriate response. Also, do any of your people require medical attention? We had 3 crew members get minor bruises during that engagement, and I want to make sure our medical bay is ready if anyone else needs treatment. The Vexari leadership exchanged glances of pure disbelief. The humans had just performed what they considered an impossible feat of military action, and their main concern was treating minor bruises. "What kind of people are you?" Elder Zephys finally managed to ask. "We're from Earth," Elena replied cheerfully. "It's a class-toileting death world in the Sol system. Don't worry, though. We're friendly to peaceful species. We just have strong feelings about bullies." Dr. Lennis quickly accessed their galactic databases and searched for Class Deathworld Deathworld. What she found made her tentacles curl in terror. According to the files, Class 2 these worlds were considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. The gravity alone would crush most known species. The atmospheric composition was toxic to the majority of life forms, and the native predators were classified as theoretically impossible. No wonder these humans fought so effectively. They had evolved in hell and somehow learned to smile about it. "Captain," Elder Zephys said carefully, "we are very grateful for your help, but we must ask, what do you want in return?" The answer came immediately: nothing. "You asked for help, and helping people is what we do. Just point us toward the bad guys and we'll handle the rest." For the first time in months, Elder Zephys felt something that might have been hope. It was quickly overshadowed by a growing fear that their saviors might be more dangerous than their enemies. The conference room aboard the Vindication was not designed for alien visitors. The chairs were too heavy for most species to move, the gravity was almost twice galactic standard, and the air contained enough oxygen to be mildly toxic to many life forms. Elder Zephys and Dr. Lennis wore environmental suits that made them look like children playing dress-up. Captain Elena Vasquez sat across from them, completely comfortable in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens within hours. She was reviewing the tactical data the Vexari had provided about the Korthak invasion fleet, occasionally making notes on a device that projected holographic displays. "Interesting pattern," Elena observed, manipulating the three-dimensional star map floating between them. They hit systems in a specific order, always starting with the outer planets and working inward. Very methodical. Dr. Lennis leaned forward as much as her bulky environmental suit would allow. Yes, they stripped the outer worlds first to establish supply bases, then moved toward the populated inner planets. It gives them time to study their targets and plan the most efficient harvest. "Harvest," Elena repeated, her voice carrying a note of disgust. "That's what they call it when they eat entire civilizations? They view other species as resources," Elder Zephys explained. "Plants for nutrients, animals for labor or food, intelligent beings for specialized tasks. They have been operating this way for over 2,000 years. Elena nodded thoughtfully, then pulled up another display. "According to your data, their main fleet will arrive here in approximately 6 months. Over 10,000 ships, including their command vessels and troop transports." "Yes," whispered Dr. Lennis. "We have been trying to prepare defenses, but our weapons are completely inadequate. Our most powerful planetary defense cannons cannot even penetrate their ship armor." "Well, defense is overrated anyway," Elena said casually. "The best defense is a good offense, or in this case, a really spectacular offense." She touched her control device and the star map zoomed out to show a much larger area of space. Red markers indicated known Korthak territories while blue dots marked Confederation worlds. "Here's what I'm thinking," Elena continued. "Instead of waiting for them to come to you, we go to them. Hit their staging areas, disrupt their supply lines, maybe take out a few of their major bases." Elder Zephys felt her blood turn cold. "Captain, you cannot possibly be suggesting an offensive action against the entire Korthak hegemony. They control hundreds of star systems. Their military forces number in the millions." "Sure, but most of those forces are tied up in occupation duties," Elena replied, studying the map. "And their supply chain is really vulnerable if you know where to hit it. Look here. They have to funnel resources through these 3 major junction points. Take those out, and you cut off supplies to about 60% of their fleet." Dr. Lennis stared at the human in amazement. "You want to attack their supply bases? Those are some of the most heavily defended positions in known space. Each one is protected by thousands of ships," Elena shrugged. "So we'll have to be creative. Do you have any data on uninhabited systems near Korthak space, particularly ones with unstable stars?" The question was so unexpected that both aliens had to ask their translation devices to repeat it. When they understood, they became even more confused. "Unstable stars?" Elder Zephys asked weakly. "Captain, what are you planning to do?" "Oh, just some minor stellar modifications," Elena said cheerfully. "Nothing too dramatic. I assume your people don't have any environmental concerns about temporarily adjusting the output of a few suns?" The two Vexari exchanged glances through their helmet visors. They had no idea what stellar modifications meant in human terms, but it sounded absolutely terrifying. "Captain," Dr. Lennis said carefully, "perhaps you could explain your tactical plan in more detail? We want to understand how you intend to help us. Elena smiled and activated another holographic display. Sure thing. Let me show you some examples of human military history. This might help you understand our approach to problem solving. The image that appeared above the table made both aliens gasp in horror. It showed a mushroom cloud rising above a destroyed city, with radiation readings that peaked off their sensors. This is from a conflict on Earth about 300 years ago, Elena explained casually. Two human nations were fighting, and one decided to end the war quickly. They used something called an atomic bomb. Pretty effective, though we consider this primitive by current standards. Elder Zephys felt faint. You destroyed your own cities? With weapons like that? Well, it was war, Elena said, as if that explained everything. The important thing is that it worked. The enemy surrendered immediately, which actually saved millions of lives in the long run. Sometimes you have to be willing to use overwhelming force to prevent greater suffering. Dr. Lennis was frantically running calculations in her head. If this was primitive human warfare, what were their current capabilities? The energy readings from their ship suggested weapons that could crack planets like eggs. Captain, she asked in a very small voice, what would you consider a modern human military response? Elena's smile became distinctly predatory. Let me put it this way. We've learned that if you're going to fight a war, you might as well win it decisively. Half measures just lead to longer conflicts and more casualties on both sides. She touched her control device again, and the display showed a technical schematic that neither alien could understand. It appeared to involve manipulating gravitational fields and controlled stellar collapse. The beauty of this plan, Elena continued, is that it's completely proportional. They want to harvest your people? We harvest them instead. They want to strip your worlds bare? We strip their empire bare. Simple, effective, and permanent. Elder Zephys was beginning to understand. Why Earth was classified as a death world, it wasn't just the environment that was deadly, it was the inhabitants, Captain, she said hesitantly. When you say permanent, what exactly do you mean? I mean we solve your Korthak problem completely, Elena replied. No more raids, no more harvests, no more threat to peaceful species. They started this fight, but we're going to finish it. The cold certainty in the human's voice sent chills through both aliens. They had asked for help against their enemies, but they were beginning to realize they might have unleashed something far more dangerous than the Korthak. What about prisoners? Dr. Lennis asked. Surely some of them could be reformed, educated to live peacefully. Elena considered this for a moment. We'll give them one chance to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, or if they try to negotiate from a position of strength, then we implement the full solution. And if they accept surrender? Then we turn them over to their former victims for justice, Elena said simply. Your people can decide what to do with them. We just handle the military problem. Elder Zephys realized that her hands were shaking inside her environmental suit. The humans were offering exactly what the Confederation had asked for, protection from the Korthak threat. But their methods were so far beyond anything the peaceful species could comprehend that it felt like making a deal with cosmic forces beyond their control. How long will this operation take? She asked. Elena checked her chronometer. If everything goes according to plan, 6 months should be plenty. We'll have this wrapped up before their main fleet even reaches your space. 6 months to defeat an empire that has terrorized the galaxy for 2 millennia? Well, Elena said with a grin that showed far too many teeth, we are in a bit of a hurry. High Admiral Krexvor of the Korthak hegemony had conquered 47 star systems in his long career. He had personally overseen the harvesting of countless worlds and the enslavement of hundreds of species. Nothing in the galaxy had ever challenged the Korthak military machine, which was why the reports from the Vexari sector made no sense. Repeat that, he commanded, his armored bulk shifting in the command chair of his flagship. High Admiral, his communications officer said nervously. The entire Vexari scouting fleet has been destroyed. All 15 ships completely eliminated in 17 standard time units, and by what force? Did the Galactic Union finally intervene? No, sir. According to the last transmission, it was a single vessel from an unknown species. They call themselves humans and claim to be from something called Earth. Krexvor's mandibles clicked in amusement. One ship destroyed 15 of our vessels? Impossible. The data must be corrupted. Sir, we also intercepted some communications from these humans. They appear to be planning offensive operations against our territory. The High Admiral's amusement faded. In 2,000 years, no species had dared to attack Korthak's base. Their empire was built on the simple principle that resistance was futile, and aggression was met with overwhelming retaliation. "Show me the location of their homeworld," Krexvor ordered. "It's time to teach these humans what happens to those who interfere with the hegemony." The star charts revealed Earth's location in a previously unexplored sector. According to their databases, it was a Class 3 death world, uninhabitable by any reasonable standard. The fact that an intelligent species had evolved there was surprising, but Krexvor had seen stranger things. "Assemble the terror fleet," he commanded. 50,000 ships, full war configuration. We will cleanse this infestation before proceeding with the Vexari harvest. What followed was the largest military mobilization in Korthak history. Ships from across their empire converged on staging areas near human space. The terror fleet represented the absolute peak of Korthak military power. Vessels designed specifically for the complete annihilation of entire civilizations. Meanwhile, the U.S. Vindication was implementing Captain Vasquez's plan with methodical precision. The first target was a Korthak supply depot in the Zerion system, defended by 300 warships and considered impregnable. "Beginning approach," reported Lieutenant Chen from the navigation station. "Enemy fleet is holding defensive positions around the depot." Elena studied the tactical display with professional interest. The Korthak had arranged their ships in a traditional defensive sphere, with overlapping fields of fire and multiple fallback positions. It was textbook military strategy for protecting a fixed installation. "Weapons," she called. "Do we have a clean shot at that star?" "Yes, Captain. The primary is a red giant already showing signs of instability." "Perfect. Fire when ready." The device that struck Zerion's sun was barely the size of a baseball, but it contained technology that most galactic civilizations couldn't even theorize about. It didn't destroy the star. It simply adjusted its fusion rate by a few percentage points. The result was a solar flare that swept through the entire system, like the breath of an angry god. Korthak ships designed to operate in the vacuum of space were not built to withstand the radiation and charged particles of a stellar event. 300 vessels died instantly, their crews cooked inside their own armor. The supply depot itself was vaporized, along with several months' worth of provisions for the Korthak fleet. "Target eliminated," reported the weapons officer with satisfaction. "Moving to secondary objective." The pattern repeated across Korthak space. Where traditional military doctrine called for fleet engagements and territorial conquest, the humans simply removed obstacles. Stars became weapons, gravity wells became traps, and entire systems were turned into kill zones. The Korthak tried to adapt, spreading their forces thin to avoid concentration targets. The humans responded by hunting their ships individually, using stealth technology that made their vessel invisible to Korthak sensors until it was far too late. When the terror fleet finally found the Vindication near the ruins of another Korthak base, High Admiral Krexvor felt a surge of savage satisfaction. 50,000 ships against one. The odds were finally in his favor. "This is High Admiral Krexvor of the Korthak hegemony," he broadcast to the human vessel. "You have committed acts of war against our empire. Surrender immediately, and we will grant you the honor of dying in combat rather than being processed as livestock." The response came from Captain Vasquez herself, her voice carrying across space with icy calm. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Expeditionary Force. You made this personal when you threatened people who asked for our help. We don't negotiate with parasites." The battle that followed redefined the concept of warfare for every species monitoring the engagement. The humans didn't try to fight 50,000 ships. They eliminated them systematically, using weapons and tactics that broke every rule of civilized combat. Nanite clouds consumed Korthak hull metal faster than they could retreat. Antimatter torpedoes turned entire squadrons into expanding balls of plasma. When Korthak boarding parties managed to reach the human ship, they found something that shattered their understanding of combat entirely. The human Marines fought like demons given physical form. These creatures, who looked soft and vulnerable compared to Korthak natural armor, refused to die even when suffering wounds that should have been instantly fatal. They moved with impossible speed in their own ship's crushing gravity, and their weapons fired projectiles that punched through Korthak battle armor like paper. Worse, they seemed to enjoy the fighting. Where most galactic species viewed combat as an unfortunate necessity, the humans approached it with an enthusiasm that terrified their enemies. They used tactics that no civilized being would consider: suicide attacks, deliberate sacrifices, and strategies that accepted massive damage in exchange for tactical advantage. In 6 hours, the Terror fleet was reduced to floating debris and radiation. High Admiral Krexvor's flagship was the last to die, and his final transmission was a desperate plea for mercy. "We surrender," he broadcast. "Please, we can negotiate. There must be terms you will accept." Captain Vasquez's response was broadcast across the galaxy, on every frequency the Korthak had ever used. "You should have thought of that before you decided to harvest peaceful species. This is what happens when you threaten people under our protection." The Vindication's final salvo turned the flagship into scattered atoms. But the humans weren't finished. With the main Korthak fleet destroyed, they began a systematic campaign against every Korthak base, outpost, and colony in known space. It wasn't war. It was extermination performed with surgical precision. The few Korthak ships that tried to flee found that the humans had anticipated their escape routes. Those that attempted to hide discovered that human sensors could track them across multiple star systems. The ones that surrendered were turned over to their former victims, who had their own ideas about justice. Within 4 months, the Korthak hegemony simply ceased to exist. A civilization that had terrorized the galaxy for 2 millennia was erased from the universe by a single human ship and its crew of 200 volunteers. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as reports came in from former Korthak territory. Every military installation destroyed, every fleet eliminated, every world either liberated or left as a warning to others who might consider similar careers. The humans had kept their promise to solve the Korthak problem. They had just done it in a way that no one else could have imagined. The UES Vindication returned to Vexari space 6 months after it had departed, arriving exactly on schedule. Captain Elena Vasquez sent a brief message to the Confederation leadership. "Mission accomplished. The Korthak problem has been resolved. Request permission to dock for debriefing." Elder Zephys received the message while sitting in her garden on Serenus, trying to process the reports that had been flooding in from across the galaxy. The news was almost impossible to believe. The Korthak hegemony, a force that had seemed as permanent and unstoppable as gravity itself, had simply vanished. "They actually did it," she whispered to Dr. Lennis, who was reading the latest intelligence reports with a mixture of awe and terror. "Yes," Dr. Lennis replied, her tentacles trembling slightly. "According to our sources, every Korthak military installation has been destroyed. Every fleet has been eliminated. Their entire civilization has been removed." The word hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Removed. Not defeated, not conquered. Completely erased from existence. The humans had approached the problem of the Korthak hegemony the same way one might approach a pest infestation, and with similar results. Word of the human solution had spread throughout the known galaxy faster than the speed of light. Emergency sessions had been called by every major government, military alliance, and trading confederation. Some species hailed humanity as liberators who had freed the galaxy from an ancient evil. Others began frantically fortifying their borders against these new apex predators, who could eliminate civilizations as an afternoon's work. The Galactic Union, which had refused to help the Confederation against the Korthak, now sent urgent diplomatic messages requesting immediate contact with Earth. The Hegemony Defense League, a group of militaristic species that had considered themselves the galaxy's premier warriors, quietly disbanded rather than risk attracting human attention. Most disturbing of all were the requests for assistance. Over 40 different species had sent messages to the Confederation, asking to be put in contact with the humans. Some wanted protection from their own enemies. Others offered tribute in exchange for non-aggression pacts. A few brave souls even offered to hire human mercenaries for their own conflicts. "What have we done?" Elder Zephys asked quietly. The question was answered when Captain Vasquez requested a meeting. Elder Zephys, Dr. Lennis, and Commander Veltar traveled to the orbital station where the Vindication had docked, wearing their heaviest environmental suits and accompanied by a medical team, in case the encounter proved too stressful. The human ship looked the same as before, but now the Confederation representatives knew what those innocent-looking weapon ports could do. They had seen the recordings from former Korthak space. Stars turned into weapons, entire fleets reduced to cosmic dust, and planets left as monuments to the consequences of threatening species under human protection. Captain Vasquez met them in the same conference room as before, looking relaxed and cheerful. She appeared to be in excellent health despite having just completed what military historians would later classify as the most devastating campaign in galactic history. Elder Zephys, Dr. Lennis, Commander Veltar, she greeted them warmly. Good to see you again. I trust the Korthak haven't been bothering you lately? The casual tone made Elder Zephys feel slightly dizzy. Captain Vasquez, we wanted to thank you for your assistance. The threat to our people has been eliminated. No problem at all, Elena replied. That's what we came here to do. Though I have to say the Korthak were even more unpleasant than your report suggested. We found evidence of harvesting operations on over 300 worlds. Some of those populations had been enslaved for centuries. Dr. Lennis leaned forward. Captain, if I may ask, what happened to the surviving Korthak populations? Our sensors detected several worlds that appeared to have been evacuated. Elena's expression grew serious. We gave them one chance to surrender unconditionally. The ones who accepted were turned over to their former victims for judgment. Most of the victim species chose exile over execution, which was more merciful than I expected. And the ones who didn't surrender? They chose to fight to the end, Elena said simply. We honored their choice. The cold finality of the statement sent chills through all three aliens. The humans had offered mercy once, and when it was refused, they had proceeded with complete extermination. It was a level of military efficiency that most species couldn't even comprehend. Captain, Elder Zephys said carefully, we have been receiving communications from other species throughout the galaxy. Many of them are concerned about humanity's military capabilities. Elena raised an eyebrow. Concerned? Why? We only attack aggressors. Peaceful species have nothing to worry about. But your definition of proportional response appears to include the complete elimination of entire civilizations, Dr. Lennis pointed out. Well, yes, Eleanor agreed. If you're going to fight a war, you should plan to win it decisively. Half measures just lead to longer conflicts and more casualties on both sides. Commander Veltar, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. Captain, many species are wondering what humanity wants. What are your long-term goals in this region of space? Elena looked genuinely puzzled by the question. We don't want anything. We came because you asked for help. We solved your problem and now we're going home. Earth has plenty of challenges to keep us busy without trying to build an empire. But surely you realize that your actions have implications, Elder Zephys said. The balance of power in the galaxy has completely shifted. Many species are afraid that humanity will become the new dominant force. That sounds like their problem, not ours, Elena replied with a shrug. We're not interested in dominating anyone. We just have strong feelings about bullies. The three aliens exchanged glances. The humans genuinely didn't seem to understand the fear they had inspired. To them, the complete annihilation of the Korthak hegemony had been a straightforward police action, not a demonstration of cosmic-level military power. Captain, Dr. Lennis said hesitantly, what if other aggressive species emerge? What if someone else threatens peaceful civilizations? Elena's smile was warm but somehow terrifying. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Korthak did. We know where you live now, Elder Zephys. If anyone threatens the Confederation again, just give us a call. She paused, then added helpfully. But maybe next time, be more specific about what kind of help you want. We assumed you wanted a permanent solution to your problem. As the meeting concluded and the human ship prepared to depart for Earth, Elder Zephys found herself updating the Confederation's xenobiology databases. Next to the entry for Homo sapiens, she added a new classification. Status, helpful. Extremely dangerous when helpful. Do not anger. Do not disappoint. Under no circumstances should they be bored. Warning. This species considers the complete elimination of enemy civilizations to be a proportional response to threats against their allies. Approach with extreme caution and very clear instructions. The entry was immediately copied and distributed to every government, military organization, and trading company in known space. Within weeks, it became the most widely referenced xenobiology file in galactic history. Meanwhile, Captain Vasquez sat in her quarters aboard the Vindication, writing her mission report for Earth Command. The operation had been a complete success. The threat to the Confederation had been eliminated with minimal human casualties. 3 crew members had suffered minor injuries during the campaign, all of whom had made full recoveries. She made a note to recommend that future first contact protocols include clearer definitions of terms like assistance and proportional response. Apparently, other species had very different ideas about appropriate military action. Still, she reflected, the mission had accomplished its primary objective. The Vexari and their allies were safe, the galaxy was rid of a parasitic civilization, and humanity had established its reputation as a reliable ally to peaceful species. Not bad for humanity's first diplomatic mission to the stars, as the Vindication jumped to faster-than-light travel and began its journey home. It left behind a galaxy that would never be quite the same. The age of unchallenged aggressors was over. In its place had come something new, the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness between the stars, there were beings who would respond to calls for help with overwhelming and terrifying efficiency. The humans had kept their promise to protect those who asked for their aid. They had just done it in a way that ensured no one would ever forget the lesson.